convince me that the sound of cicadas in the summertime was actually the sound of the sun's rays beating down on Earth. For years I believed him, and would comment on how it sounds really hot outside. Our parents are deaf, so they just went along with it.
Both the parents are deaf?
You flip the light switch, it cost an extra $0.25 in electricity. I suspect Dad was trying to stop my light switch raves. Turns out it's totally legal to have that little light on in the front of the car while someone is driving. That there was such thing as a permanent record in school, lol. It was late at night. We were driving home, and I was at that age where I ask a question every 3 minutes. For some reason I'm the only person in my family that's never been baptized, and my little cousin had just recently been baptized, so I wanted to learn more. I asked my mum, if you get baptized, do you have to become a priest? She probably didn't listen, and I can't blame her, because she gave me a very offhand yes. I was so smug knowing my cousin was resigned to be a priest and I could be whatever I want. What a little crap I was. If you push someone else's belly button, they'll explode in 10 years. I was terrified at age 6 when my brother pushed mine. Next year they're gonna be a lot harder on you about this, and the rules only get more strict. Heard that at the end of every year in elementary school, but by high school
the stream is now up and running.
You can totally have a pet eyes.
I'm using my other phone to like
even care.
check the chat.
Second grade teacher told us your small intestine could wrap around the world if unwound. I believed it for an embarrassingly long time, before my mother laughed at me and asked where I kept my wheelbarrow full of intestines. Lol. That Santa was shot down over Algeria. Some kid in my kindergarten made it sound like a breaking news story, so we all believed him. Turns out there isn't a Santa. I was told that when you go to the bathroom on a plane and flush, your poop literally falls down, but it all falls apart into small pieces before it hits anyone. I didn't find out the truth until I was 24. I went on a trip with my 2 best friends and they were confused as to why I was busting, but refusing to go to the bathroom. I told them I had to wait until the plane hit a certain altitude, so I don't attack someone underneath.
Wait, what game were you playing again, Mel?
My class was split up into other classes. My teacher was away for the day.
Say again?
I asked the teacher how to spell breakfast during journal writing time. He told me, how do you spell break? And how do you spell feast? Now put them together. The next day in spelling class I spelled BREAKFERST. Never forget. I feel like I was led to believe
I should have called it.
The association between dogs and fire hydrants was a lot stronger than it actually is. My mom told me, and my twin sister, that when it was foggy outside it was because the frogs were singing, and she would say it's foggy outside. My twin literally argued with the teacher about what fog is and where it comes from. She told the whole class it was because frogs were singing, and then went home and told my mom that the teacher was crazy and teaching us wrong information. My mom dragged me to a lot of adult-only work-related events when I was a kid. 12-yo, as she had this need to show off her family. She was basically one of those mothers that everyone likes to complain about. The ones who just won't leave little Susie at home because she's so well behaved and would love attending a 6-hour-long evening of stuff and ends way past her bedtime. Every time there was a dinner, awards ceremony,
like where is hiring?
Auction, bridal shower, etc., I was expected to go, and every time I asked, would there be other kids there? And every time my mother would answer, yes, there will be loads of other children there. And every time we arrived, the youngest person there was 30. But I was at that age where you trusted what your parents told you. So even though deep down I knew my mom was lying to me, there was always a spark of hope that she wasn't, which was dashed every time. That bread crust was the healthiest thing. I remember being told in elementary school that we must learn cursive, because in high school it would be the only accepted form of writing. In middle school and up, all my teachers required us to print. That you must have perfect vision to be an astronaut.
I never learned cursive writing.
As a child. If you swallow a watermelon seed, a watermelon won't grow in your stomach, because that's the wrong biology. But if you chew on your
come the fuck on.
Then a hand will definitely grow in your stomach and rip out your guts, because biology. That taste buds are distributed unevenly across the tongue, with certain taste profiles being stronger in certain areas. That the big, round hay bales covered in white plastic were where marshmallows came from. My family literally told me that these were marshmallow
Not
farms.
gonna wait.
Lies. That another name for Hooters is the new McDonald's. My dad just told me and my brother that, so that when we talked about going there in front of my mom, she wouldn't know that my dad just brought a couple of
That's what you
elementary
get.
school children to a booby bar. That Dairy Queen was closed in the winter. In Buffalo we have 8 months of winter. Evil. Negative numbers didn't exist. Elementary school in a small town did not encourage moving ahead of the curriculum. I've mentioned this before, but somehow or other, my father somehow convinced me that the Brown Ups delivery trucks were called
For his
broccoli
game?
trucks. No, they didn't deliver broccoli. They delivered packages. No, they were not associated with broccoli in any way at all. So, why were they called broccoli trucks? Damned if I know. Dad logic. I learned the truth about things far later than I should have in middle school. Actually, when I offhandedly remarked that I'd seen a broccoli truck in the parking lot, my teacher overheard me and asked me to point it out, then gave me a look of skeptical confusion
Come the fuck
when I
on, yo.
indicated the Ups truck. That was the moment when I realized my dad might have made up the whole
Critical hits
broccoli
up the
truck
ass.
myth. I wound up trying to explain that it was a family tradition to refer to delivery vehicles by odd names. But everything I said only seemed to make my teacher grow more suspicious. Upon hearing the story from me, my father did
They
a
didn't do
very
shit.
poor job of restraining his laughter.
That ain't do nothing.
My favorite color is something people want to know. My dad told me that Kraft cheese slices are made of plastic flavored cheese. I still believe it on some level. You won't always have a calculator with you. In all fairness, I don't think my teachers could have predicted smartphones. So many years spent looking out for quicksand. That my brother turned into a gorilla on full moons.
Yo, how
That
many Pokemon does this guy have? Oh my
My
god.
mom always told playing a
Got like 8
northeast would
Pokemon.
destroy my TV. Someone lent me one, and I was literally shaking as I hooked it up. She stared at me as I did also, and was telling me I wouldn't get a new TV once it blows up. Played all night, and learned she had lied to me for years. Go to school, and work hard for a good degree and you'll get a good paying job. Work hard and you'll be able to get a 1600 SFT 3-bed/2 bath house in a good neighborhood, like I did, when I was 26.
I should've just
Stick
gotten
with
this
your
stab.
employer, loyalty is rewarded. Not mine, but a friend's ex-girlfriend.
Never mind.
Her sister told her the yellow
Talk about
inside
the
a
game.
Cadbury egg was mustard. 4 years the ex would give her sister her Cadbury eggs every Easter. It wasn't until she was 17 years old she realized she was being lied to. Where are all the free drugs everyone warned me about? Felt like the adults oversold us on college. They made it sound like you would end up being a bum if you didn't go. But now, there's other crap. My
Reddit
dad had
stories.
me believing that Hitler was my great uncle. He doesn't even remember saying it, but laughs his ass off every single time. I convinced my sister her real name was HIV. She just went by IV. For short. Definitely spent some time in my room over that one. My mother told me that she pulled the
Miss
tail on
sister
the
named
MGM line to
HIV.
get it raw before the movies started. I'm 62 now. You gotta wait 39 minutes before swimming. Take big whiff.
But she was cracking
Makes the
up.
fun go away faster. When I was a kid eating tough food,
It should've happened
like
that funny, but it
steak,
was.
my parents said that I had to chew each piece 100 times before swallowing. Jokes on them. Now I eat T-bone steaks whole. It's illegal to drive barefoot. After high school, the real world sucks. It doesn't. My dad has deviated septum surgery, and my uncle was in town to help for a couple days of recovery. We went to a Lions restaurant to get
Fuck.
some soup for my dad. Before we walked in, my uncle said, "Look, this is great. It's Tuesday. They do chicken noodle on Tuesday." In my kid brain, I combined this with the other soup data point, where most places have clam chowder on Friday. I put together the concept of a national soup schedule and never questioned it. Mind you, we did not eat a lot of soup, so I didn't have much opportunity to test this concept, and it held up for the most part when I paid attention. Fast forward 20 years, when I'm going to a brand new restaurant in a brand new city with my now wife, and she says soup sounds good. I say something to the effect of it's Tuesday. They will have chicken noodle. I get a look of utter confusion, followed by wheels turning, followed by laughter. She put together that I thought there was a soup schedule that our restaurants had followed, and proceeded to explain the harsh realities of the restaurant world to me. Not only did I think this, I had thought this for 20 years. That girls would like me if I practiced being myself. The only problem was that at that time myself was a dork who couldn't talk to women. I would get a cold if I went outside / to bed with wet hair. If you don't drink a full glass of milk when you eat cornbread, your bones will crumble into dust. Although this may have mostly been an excuse for dry cornbread. My dad told me that the plural for foot was fetus. Didn't figure that one out till the 5th grade. Still haven't forgiven him for it. Shaving doesn't actually make the hair grow back faster.
Whoever believes that's
That
stupid.
just happens naturally as you age. The blue bit on the other side of the eraser can be used to
That
write pen. Citrus
if you
fruits
shave hair, it
contain
goes back
poisonous
thicker. I mean
if you
faster.
freeze them. It's one of those family things where my grandparents believed it. One parent convinced the other, and so I grew up believing it. That cracking your fingers will give you arthritis. Surprised this isn't higher up. That was a big one. We'll go there after.
What?
We never went there after.
What?
Christopher Columbus was this great guy who discovered America.
What?
Yeah, not so much.
I spoke Wiz
I
Khalifa.
was told all the spots on the ground in the parking lots were from little kids who didn't hold their parents' hand and got run over. I believed till I was 12. My parents' work rule. Writing on yourself gives you lead poisoning. Tomorrow will be better. You're not going to have a calculator with you everywhere you go. Math teacher. Frick you. Mrs. Brown. Sent from the calculator I carry everywhere I go.
My mother was a calculator.
When I was from ages 3, 5, my grandparents used to take me out for breakfast at McDonald's all the time. I thought it was great. Turns out we were really at a Sambo's which shared a parking lot with McDonald's. And I was content to eat there, as long as the golden arches were within view. Pumpadinks. My dad told us that he was the green munchkin in the Lollipop Guild from The Wizard of Oz, and that the other 2 were my 2 uncles. I told my friends about it all the time. He also told me, and my siblings, that if we didn't say our mad as we put the hotel key in the door, it would blow up. To this day, I still say it in my head, whenever I open a hotel room with a card. For those who don't know, Ramada is a hotel chain in the US. Also, he told us that BMW stands for Blomidwe, which is blue with / and white in German. I totally believed it as a child, because of the blue and white checkers on BMWs. My dad is a nut. When I was a little boy afraid of the dark, I would hear the typical night noises, and think they were something terrifying. My dad would explain to me that there is nothing in Australia that can hurt me, no lions or tigers or bears and such. Now I'm older and of course we realize that this is Australia and everything is trying to kill us. Funnel webs, redbacks, tapins, death adders, tiger snakes and so on. Little girls that don't hold their mom's hand in the parking lot or store would get stolen by trolls and turned into hamburgers. I did not like trolls or hamburgers, but I did like squatting in parking lots and hiding in clothes racks with
Hamburger.
My mom told me that the box of tampons I found were rockets. So I took the first opportunity I could to shoot the entire box out of my grandparents' living room window. My mom found them all over the driveway when she got home from
Hamburger.
work, mortified. The recording of the man that used to start playing after the phone was left off the receiver for too long was called the Ugly. If I didn't stop playing with the goddamn house phone, he would come through the handset as a cloud of butterflies and carry me away forever. One of my mom's favorites was calling the man. According to her, this threat worked for a stretch, but I caught on while purposefully dropping french fries on the diner floor like an asshole. My frustrated mother warned me to cut it out. If you don't stop and eat your food, I'm going to call the man. I immediately
My
fired
dumb
back.
ass.
That's okay. Go ahead. Do it.
He's
You know
false
what?
white.
I'll do it. Hands on my hips. I called for the man in an exaggerated sing-song, before turning to say, well, I guess he's not coming. She was speechless. I was smart.
Oh my god, how many times
That
did I
was
hit?
the last I heard of the man. There's just so many. I don't know how my parents put up with me, especially my mom.
I just stayed jumping.
Jump through the hoops.
To yourself.
Everyone does it. Jump through a few more, and you'll be done. My pet cats didn't understand me because they spoke Japanese. I learned Japanese and was seriously disappointed. That breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Considering that most American breakfast food is basically dessert, you're probably just as well off without it. I legitimately thought men had one less rib than women until like 0.5 years ago. I'm 23 and was raised by evangelical Christians. My dad being a pastor. You will only be able to write in cursive for the rest of your life. That the earth is only a few thousand years old and a man built a boat to take a male and female of every species into to save from a flood that kills all the evil gods. You'll never get anywhere in life by being a bully. That chocolate milk came from brown cows. All kinds of stuff about other races I would rather not repeat. When I was in high school in the late 70s, they told
Yo,
us
Teniers is
if
actually
we
broken.
smoked pot, we'd have bad
Stab,
trips years
return.
later. Like we'd be the
Crazy.
president of some company and suddenly start tripping and take all our clothes off. Or be at a church and start yelling that everyone is melting. I'm 58 and still waiting for my trip. The RFID
You know what stab
of
is?
the beast is coming, and you'll be forced to take it by 2012. Been told to me ever since I was 8 or so. Never came to pass, though it did terrify the crap out of me as a kid. At American evangelicals. After asking my mum, I thought 4 years after that thunder was caused by clouds bumping into each other.
That's
Stepdad
cute.
convinced my sister he had Peter Andre as a cousin and that Peter's real name was Michael McElthwaite. I overheard and assumed it to be true. Led to a lot of embarrassment when revealing this fact to schoolmates, some whom were big fans, and proved this to be
Heal up and go
untrue.
back to
Thankfully 10 years on
I mean,
from
go
the
back to
embarrassment, I don't take my parents' words as gold anymore. On our first giant family trip to Red Lobster, when I'm about 4 years old, there's a tank of salamanders
This
out in the
man
waiting
who's,
area to give people something
like,
to
leading
look
the
at.
hotel is a
My
pedo.
mom convinces me that they make these things called hush puppies out of them. I didn't eat a hush puppy until I was about 16.
Smells a hush puppy.
Turns out he's a goddamn liar. That the Mr. Softy truck only played that music when they had run out of ice cream. That I could be anything and wanted to be, if I just try hard enough. What a crock. After asking why old movies were black and white, my dad told me that the whole world was just black and white back then, and color wasn't invented / discovered until 40 or so years ago. At that point, I had no proof otherwise. That all men go through a gay phase, and that people who call themselves gay only do so because the media glorifies homosexuality and they don't understand that it's just a phase they'll grow out of. Wasn't until after I was 18 and started college that I realized most straight men probably don't jerk off exclusively to gay 30th. And the fact that I do probably means I'm not straight. My dad
What are you?
once told me that
What are you
if
watching,
pinch your
Vivian?
nose in blood,
Vivian, what are you
your
watching?
eyeballs will pop out. He told a long, involved story about how Germans used this as a method of torture
Oh, it's
in
Reddit.
WWI. And after
But it's
battles
for the
there would
little
be
people.
soldiers wandering around the battlefield with their eyeballs dangling from their optical nerves. Fast forward 5 years to when I'm 10.
This room is about to get
My
his ass
family is on
kicked.
a plane coming back from vacation, and I'm sitting next to my mom. I start experiencing really terrible pressure in my ears, which I've never felt before. I'm whining to my mom when a monk sitting in front of me
I'm
turns
whining to my
around
mom.
and tells me to hold my nose and blow. Obviously this has me shook, since I know for a fact this will cause my eyeballs to pop out. I say to my mom, but dad says my eyeballs will pop out. I don't remember her exact response, but it was something along the lines of a snort. Figured out my dad was a big time liar. Popped my ears, and my eyeballs
Yes.
stay intact. I told my dad this story a couple years ago, and we both got a big laugh.
Yes.
That I would go blind.
The
Women
line.
become completely insane when they turn 13, or upon the onset of puberty. They remain crazy until their late 20s. Turns out my dad's just really sexist. I had a teacher that insisted procrastination wasn't a detrimental habit for kids our age, and that we would grow out of it naturally. Nope. That babies are made when a man pees in a woman.
Hmm?
When I was 6, my mom told me that McDonald's in China was
Facts.
called McDonald's. 8-year-old me was extremely disappointed when we finally visited China and all around I saw were McDonald's
How's that do?
signs. The only way to be successful is to go to college. Around 91, as a 7-year-old, I went into my barber to get a haircut and get a lightning bolt and the number 3 shaved into my head, as was the style at the time. I'm white
Oh, thank God.
BTW. The barber
Day
told
about to
me
get.
that was something you needed to call ahead to get done, which I later realized is completely ridiculous and was just for my own sake. When I was a kid we had cats, and then they all started having kittens. I think the final count was somewhere in the neighborhood of 26 cats, mostly newborn kittens.
Oh, thank God.
Not crazy cat lady house. My dad and stepmom told us they were taking the cats to a cat farm. We accepted that as truth, and envisioned our cats living out their life on a quaint farm with a barn, making friends with cows.
All these
Fast
baby
forward
Pokemon.
20 years, and I work in a real estate office. I had
Okay, I
never
think this game
mentioned a cat
purposely
farm
tries
to
to hit
anyone
the
before.
not
But
hit the
we had a
weakest link.
client who was buying a house, and he had to get rid of his cats. I immediately offered up the information about the cat farm, and offered to call my stepmom, to get him contact info. I called her right in front of him. Hey mom, remember when I was a kid and you took our cats to a cat farm? Yeah, I have a client who would like to take his cats there, too. Long pause and then a giant burst of laughter rang into my ear. She confessed they took all the cats to the woods near our house and let them go. I was devastated and tried to think of what I was going to tell the client. I said
Yes.
goodbye, hung up the phone, and politely told him the cat farm was closed. My face and ears were on fire. The maximum dose of lidocaine is 500 milligrams. Turns out it's actually 400 milligrams. Who would have guessed dental school would straight up lie to you about something that important? They tease you, because they like you. If you sit on cold concrete steps you will get hemorrhoids. Republicans are in favor of fiscal responsibility. So I have 2 older sisters and we are all within 3.5 years of each other in age. My oldest sister swears to this day that she never told us this. But the middle sister and myself both remember the same exact story coming from her.
Another fucking
Our dad
peach.
was adopted. We knew this. But we didn't know anything else at the time. His adoptive parents died before we were born, and he had no siblings.
Okay, this teddy also has to
But
go.
we didn't know anything about the details of his birth parents and whatnot. When we were like 4, 6, and 7 respectively, my oldest sister said my dad
Kill
was
it, please,
abandoned
kill
and
it, just kill
found
it,
by
just
his
kill it.
parents on the bumper of a truck.
Please kill it.
I'm not sure logistically how
It
big
done
of a
too
bumper would
much.
be needed, and if that's even possible. But yay, we believed her for a long time. Can't remember when I found out, but I guess my suspicion grew over the years. Pretty much a slew of things that ended up being proven complete bullcrap by Mythbusters. The penny dropped from Empire State Building, or bullet in water, were 2 big ones at least. Our tastabuds were broken up into segments. Adults are smart. When I was a horny teenager I found a so that claimed orgasming helped you get over colds faster, and for some reason, that has stuck with me to this day. I know it's not true now but it still is in the back of my mind as a possible remedy whenever I have a cold. My dad told me not to hit every button on the elevator, because it was operated by a bunch of midgets at the bottom of the shaft using pulleys.
You can't say that word.
And if I hit every button they'd get frustrated and come up and attack me.
The M word.
What's the most embarrassing thing you did as a child? I purposefully peed my pants in the 1st grade because I was too embarrassed to ask to go to the bathroom. I did exactly the same thing in 2nd grade. We have a fricked up idea of how embarrassing things are. I was a humper, and my parents never had the talk with me that such behavior was not appropriate in public. When I was 4, to the first black kid I met, who eventually became my best friend, I asked, "How did you get burned? You look like a burnt hot dog." Completely innocent. He shrugged and then we just became friends. It was only embarrassing when he asked his parents, in front of me, how he got burned. Dang. He got burned when some white kid asked him how he got burned. I showed my dong to my whole 2nd grade class. And that was the last day of your teaching career. When I was about 5 or so my younger brother was 2. Every time I played with his toys my mom would tell
A
me that I
Cyndaquil.
was too big for them. So the first time
Can you do a
I
cynical
saw a
impersonation?
person sit on a chair that was too small for them, guess what I said? You're too big to be sitting in that chair. When my cousin was small, my aunt, his mom, was trying to reach him manners. Please. Thank you. Sorry.
And it's
Etc.
just
So they were at the grocery store and he was trying to get around this woman. My aunt goes, say excuse me, big fat lady. I've got 2 words for you. Pool jets. So much shame. I saw my brother peeing standing up at the park. The whole way home, while crying, I screamed at the top of my lungs, I want a willy. It was a very long walk home. I was 5
my
years
god,
old and we went to a farm for a field trip. It was a really big freaking deal for my classmates and I. My mom was one of the volunteers. We were at the petting
Yo,
zoo
streamers
area
are so
where
weak.
there were rabbits, guinea pigs, chickens, etc. And I saw a little berry on the ground. I picked it up and was about to put it in my mouth when my mom ran over and slapped it out of my hands. She yelled
Oh, you gotta be
"Stop,"
fucking.
which drew the attention of everyone. I almost ate crap. Thank goodness my mom stopped me. I literally ate a piece of my own crap when I was like 4 because I thought it was a Hershey's Kiss that someone left lying on the floor. In 1st grade I once put my finger in the pencil sharpener and cranked the handle. Yes, I bled and screamed. And no, I can't fathom why I did it. Once in 2nd grade my friend Jeremy accidentally cut himself with his scissors, and my kid brain must have been like, yeah, that looks like fun, cause the first thing I did was grab a pair of scissors and slice the crap out of my hand. Still got the scar. Teacher wasn't so happy. I did crap myself on accident, so teacher was checking everyone's pants since no one would admit it. On my turn I quietly whispered it was me. I am so sorry, and she replied it is okay. I will get you a clean uniform to wear. Then I said, really embarrassed, everyone will notice I changed. No they won't, and somehow they really didn't. What a good teacher. When I was 3 or 4 I drank the majority of a bottle of delicious strawberry cough mixture and had to have my stomach pumped. Kids like me are the reason that medicine is intentionally disgusting. I don't like you anymore. All the way up to the age of 11 my sister and I slept in bunk beds. Every night after dark we would take a particular stuffy, hold it in between our bags and butts and violently fart on it, sharing the stuffy and mixing our odors. I still get really embarrassed when I see the stuffed animal, and we've both made a pact to never mention it to anyone. Kids are freaking weird. Broke the pact. My best friend in grade school and I used to howl Cookie Crisp across the playground to find each other when we were separated. Also, one time I read a book about school kids taking care of bags of flour as if they were babies. I thought it was a cool project, so I did it. I put a bag of flour in an onishi and carried it around school for a week. 5th grade was a hoot. When I was about 7, my friend and I were peeing in the bushes. I told him I could stick my pee-pee in his butt, then he could stick his in mine. He looked dubious and said, "Number." To this day, I have no idea why I thought it was a good idea. Kid had his crap straight from the get-go.
Fuck.
My mom had a friend
What
who
the
was living
fuck?
with us after his long-term boyfriend broke up with him. My mom says that when the 3 of us were out together I'd go up to strange men and ask them if they wanted to be his boyfriend. Best little wingman ever.
What the
I
fuck?
don't remember this, but when I was little I would always take dishes and utensils from around the house and put them in the toilet.
Damn,
When
Hound
my
Hour
mom
really
asked
doesn't
me
want to
what
level
I was
up.
doing, I told her I was washing them. First day of Spanish in 2nd grade. The night before my brother told me a Spanish phrase to tell my teacher. He said it would make me look smart. I ended up asking my teacher if my pants are still at her house. I have only recently reached a point in my life where I can share this with strangers and not burn with shame. It started young. I never liked the color purple. I wouldn't wear purple clothes, eat purple food. I didn't even like Barney the dinosaur. So for some reason or other, I get a set of crayons. The fancy Crayola kind, with sophisticated color names like Red Umber. I love those crayons. All except the purple one. I hated purple. So one day, my hatred of the purple crayon reaches breaking point. I decide I need to get rid of it, but I can't just throw it away. The purple crayon deserves so much worse than that. TL. Doctor, I stuck the purple crayon up my butt. I don't know how or why, but at the end of the 2nd paragraph I didn't have to read further. Just you put it in your butt. In 2nd grade we played this fishing for words game. Only 5 were allowed to play at a time. When 3 more sat down I said, "You black kids can't play with us." One kid told the teacher I meant they can't play because they're black. I was just being descriptive and didn't know better. As punishment I had to stand on the top of my desk with my arms held out for the rest of the day. We hadn't even gone to lunch yet. I was crying and very embarrassed. I didn't even get why I was in trouble until later. That sounds like a really fricked up punishment. I don't actually remember this one, but I'm told that when I was around potty training age, my family was having a large gathering at my grandmother's house. All of my cousins and I were playing in my grandmother's room and I had to poop. So being nearly potty trained, I did what any sensible 2-year-old would do and I skeezed one out on the carpet right in front of the door to the bedroom. When my cousins noticed, they started freaking out, and all the parents in the house came rushing to see what the problem was, and it so happened that my mother was the first one into the room and promptly slipped in my poop, followed by my uncle who also slipped in it. Also I made a poop pie in the sandbox again at my grandmother's house, and then
Fuck.
proceeded to smear it all over myself and the edges of the sandbox. My mother found me and hosed me off in the backyard holding me by my ponytail, because that was the only part of me that was uncovered by poo. And I do remember this one. I was not a smart child. I get a feeling you got worse gifts from your grandma than the rest of your family. In 3rd grade we would have reading time every day after lunch. The teacher would read
Ooh,
one of
Houndour
her
coming with the
favorite
critical
books to
hit.
us chapter by chapter. It was nice. Anyway, I was
The
known for
goat.
being a stinky chubby kid already, but this particular day I outdid myself. Halfway through, our teacher excitedly reading
When fairy
BFG.
Pokemon didn't
I
exist
let
back
out
then.
the rankest fart, a mixture of Satan's butthole and
I
sulfur.
said when fairy type Pokemon didn't
Everyone
exist back then.
Everyone definitely smelled it, as if God himself could add more insult. A small earthquake shook the room right as I stopped farted. Our teacher made everyone go outside, not because of the earthquake. It was only a tiny one, but because my fart smelled so bad that the teacher thought the classroom was uninhabitable whilst the fart smell lingered. I then started to cry because everyone was mad at me for ruining the BFG forever and just making it stink so bad. My 3rd grade class can confirm this. Wherever they're on now, they still remind me of this story. I am known as the kid whose fart shook the whole world. I used to hump all my stuffed animals. When I was about 8, I went with my family to a Chinese restaurant for my great aunt's 80th birthday. When the waiter, an older Chinese man, came to take our order, I said, "I'll have the cleavage." Having heard that line in Spaceballs, I had no idea what it meant at the time, and my family gaped at me in stunned silence. Only when I was maybe 15 did I realize what I had done. When I was pretty young, since kindergarten to about grade 5, I was obsessed with having boobs. I'd figured out from an early age that boobs were instant sex appeal, but in my juvenile mind, it was just what boys ogled and girls envied. But my parents had a fascination with dressing me like a boy in an attempt to look more like a pretty, girly girl like my classmates. I hatched a brilliant plan to one-up them. I'd go to the bathroom once I was dropped off at school, roll up my undershirt to my chest and strut about like I had big old titties. I guess the role was supposed to be believable cleavage. Fool your depth perception. I don't exactly know. I tried everything. Bags of pudding, stealing my sister's cupped bras, even put a ruler in my shirt. I think my child mind told me any sort of volume, no matter the shape, in that area meant boobs. And one day, my teacher called me out on it. I was in a grade 4/5 split class and wanted to impress the older kids, and me, having my undershirt rolled up as per usual, caused my teacher to
The
call me out in
fuck?
front of my whole class. "What on earth is in your shirt?" I sheepishly muttered some sort of excuse, and was sent to the washroom to straighten myself out and give myself a pep talk. I hit puberty shortly after turning 11, and dealing with all sorts of discomfort and back problems at 20 years old, I take back all of those wishes. Boobs are the worst, unless they are on other people. It was my grandma's birthday, and I was about 6 years old, so we had a big party at our house. Lots and lots of guests and of course a lot of new faces. Being a stupid, chubby but completely crazy kid, I thought I would perform an act of dancing for the audience. Unfortunately for everyone in the building, the night before I've spent more than 3 hours coming up with the dance moves, watching TV in order to find something extraordinary astonishing. And I did. It was my time to shine. So in a high-pitched voice I declared that I'm going to perform a happy birthday dance. It would be not that bad. But just before going on the stage I made a little wee-wee in my boxers. So I ripped them off my clumsy body, run out naked on the
What?
stage in front of more than 20 people, and all I do is I start to jiggle my pecker and sing happy birthday. Come and dance with me. Happy
What the
birthday
fuck?
grandma. At the grand old age of 2 my twin and I got up in the middle of the night, got out steak knives and grated cheese into the heat vent. It is a miracle we weren't hurt. My dad did his best to clean out the ductwork, but he said the smell was ingrained into our heating system. Not exactly embarrassing, but definitely odd. We also had our own language until we were about 4 years old. One time when I was eating with my family at the age of 10, I was sucking the juices out of a good breakfast sausage. Then when they asked me what I was doing, I yelled I am just sucking on my sausage. They still frick with me to this day. NBD. Mom. This is some prime meat
Smelling
here.
salt. Oh my god, this
When I
nigga
was
doing
a youngin', I
cocaine.
stayed with my grandma quite often and she would help me get ready for school. Her bathroom shower had a big opaque glass door and when it would get foggy I would draw
How the
smiley
fuck did
faces
Espeon
with the
die?
tip of
They
my
ganging
ray.
up on her.
I thought I was sneaky until one day she called out, "Are you ready to get out or are you still drawing with your wee wee?" I was mortified. To top it off, she told the rest of my family. Here I am 20 years later and my brothers still call me Picasso. Pun from Picasso. Every family gathering. Digging in the sandbox in my backyard as a child, I thought I found dinosaur fossils. I proudly showed my parents my discovery, but what I thought was rare dinosaur fossils was just old dried up cat crap. My older brother and sister were in school, and my mother was hosting a school council meeting at our house. My mother didn't particularly like the principal of the school, and nobody else really did either, but my mother made the mistake of letting us know how she felt about the principal in conversations with my father. She was a rather large woman, and ironically, so is my mother. The principal
Yo,
was
what the fuck? It's
particularly
over.
large,
Okay.
though.
It's fucking
Anyway,
damn plus
I
hope.
get to see the principal for the first time when she walks in our front door.
Took off
You're
like half
right,
my fucking
Mom.
team
She is fat.
with these
Holy
critical
cow.
hits.
Hide the Teddy Grahams. And then I grabbed the cookies from the drawer, ran upstairs, and hid them in my room. It's still a story that's told pretty much every year, and it brings us to tears laughing about it. My poor mother said she's never felt so awkward in her life. The principal had transferred a couple years later, which coincided with the time I started school there. Thank goodness. With lines like "Hide the Teddy Grahams, you should have been a comedian." I pooped in a public pool. I was about 4 and I had been having problems going number 2 and I guess the nice cool water got things moving. I tried to keep it in
Too
but
much
every
slaves
time I
today.
started walking out of the pool it would prairie dog. I yelled for my dad but he was too late. I don't remember the incident very well but my dad likes to say that it was like that scene from the movie Jaws where they spot a shark in the water and everyone starts screaming and running for their lives. But instead of a shark it was my poop. Some neighbor kids were picking on me. They locked me in the abandoned house next door to me. When I got out, I was so mad that the only thing I could think of was taking my pants off to scare them. It worked. I have no idea why I did that. I still cringe. I would sing like an opera singer. I'd also say things from advertisements all the time, and there were a series of genital herpes ads that were on quite often, which led to me screaming genital herpes in public, much to the embarrassment of my parents. I was shopping in Gap with my mom. I don't remember doing this but she won't let me live it down. When I was young I used to call Kakis Packies. So shopping in Gap in an immigrant heavy part of the city, I shouted,
Oh my
"Hey
god,
mom, look
what?
at all the Packies," in a Gap filled with Middle Eastern men and women. I called insulated underwear inflated underwear. On my first day of kindergarten, I ran up to the wrong man thinking he was my dad. His back was to me, and I clung to his leg until my mom came and pulled me off, explaining that was not, in fact, my father. I cried
Mood.
so much from embarrassment. I imagine anyway, she had to take me home. Not an overreactor at all. First day of kindergarten in America. Couldn't speak a lick of English. I farted really loudly. Everyone became my friend afterwards. Me. 5 years old. My brother and my cousin at the living room watching some movie that had boobs in it, and suddenly I say I don't know why but my pee-pee gets hard when I see boobies. Dear God, I hope they don't remember it. My friend's 6-year-old announced that he liked Hannah Montana because she made his pee-pee tickle. Poor kid is 13 now and I still make jokes about it to his mom. I love reading and really got into it around 7 or 8 years of age. Around this time, I was reading a book about Jackie Robinson. This book contained a word I had never read before, so I asked my mom what it meant. She was very matter of fact about it and told me it was a very rude word and that I should never ever use it under any circumstances. She gave me no context about the word, and I didn't really piece it together from the biography I was reading. So I filed it away under curse words and other things that get you in trouble when you say them. Fast forward a few weeks, and I am at tennis camp in the summer in the city. Both of my parents worked, and this was at a public park and attended by a good 100 kids. It is hot as can be. I'm a bit overweight. I'm strong, but not coordinated. We run a bunch of sprints, hit tennis balls, and finally play king of the court. A tennis camp game with winner stays rules. I actually win a game and get to be king, but I'm soon unseated. It's about 1,300 degrees. I'm sweaty as all can be, and when I lose, the kid who won made some crack about me. At this point, I get angry and start yelling at the kid, and for some reason,
She done already
one of the
had
counselors
hers.
decides to side with my opponent, making me mad. I, being a bit of a whiner at the time, pitch a crap fit, to which the counselor, a teenager, maybe, responds by putting an L on her head and saying to me, L is for loser. I respond by drawing an N on my head and basically shouting N is for, word used against Jackie Robinson, at a counselor, a young, female counselor, a young, black, female counselor. Here in the story, silence falls at the speed of sound, and everyone is staring. I don't get why
What is
it's so
locked for?
bad, but understand that I have done something horrible. The entire camp is paused now. We
So
are
after
all
I
gathered
finish
to
this
hear
game,
a
do you want to play
lecture from the
Pokemon Black and
camp
White?
director, who thinks I'm in the YKKK at this point.
I'm in like
About tolerance.
finish
I
playing
really
this
don't
game.
get
I was like,
exactly what I
but
did until
I
my
beat
mom
it.
comes to get me and tearfully apologizes to all involved, no doubt wondering how she raised such a terrible monster. And this is why parents need to give context to bad words. I was 9 or so when I did this. I honestly don't remember it because I didn't think it was a big deal, but my dad has told me about it dozens of times over the years. More embarrassing for him than me. When I was a kid, my dad ran a very cool classical Indian music organization in Canada. We were really lucky to have incredibly renowned artists come to our city and often come to people's houses for receptions.
Can you
One
please
time,
pick up
this famous
something?
woman came to town and we were having a
I don't care
post-concert
if it's just a
reception at
potion.
someone's house. She was really legit. Very well respected name. The kind of artist that people would bow
Damn, so I
down
can't
and
open these
touch her
boxes
feet
now.
before talking to her. At some point during the reception my dad yelled at me about something. No idea what. Maybe I was being a little crap or maybe he was just being grumpy. Regardless, I was upset at him after that. So when the artist stood up in front of everyone to speak and say thank you, apparently I looked directly at my dad and let out a several seconds long toot. The kind that goes pee-wee up in a high pitch. I guess the room fell completely silent until she stumbled back into it, and he stared daggers at me for her entire speech while I had a crap-eating grin knowing he couldn't do anything in front of anyone. He says he's never been more embarrassed in his life. Bonus. The artist died a few years later, but every time he tells me this story, and I usually can't breathe because I'm laughing so hard, he gently insinuates that it's my fault she died. You have been visited by the Safety Doggo. Subscribe and you will be safe from all danger for the next 24 hours. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people. Employers of Reddit. What is the most inappropriate piece of clothing someone has worn to a job interview? A few years back, I had someone show up fresh out of the swimming pool, hair wet, bathing suit and cover up on, still wet, hadn't taken the time to dry off. I went through the interview and a test simulation of the job with her. She actually did very well at the simulation. When I took her to see my boss, that made the ultimate decision. He took one look and said no. Didn't ask about the simulation or anything. Just no. I saw one guy come from the country club pool in an American flag tank top and swim trunks to the club's golf cart boy interview. He didn't get the job and then came back a week later in a full suit apologizing for his previous attire. Someone got lectured by their mom. A guy showed up in flip-flops, cargo shorts and a tank top. Ended up being the best interview of the day by miles. Ended up one of the best people I ever hired. I still don't recommend anyone do this, but it has worked. Homecoming dress. She knew she was supposed to dress up for the interview, and that was the nicest thing she had. I felt so bad. She was incredibly embarrassed. It was her first real interview, and in the end I gave her credit for at least putting in the effort. He came into the IT interview in polo, khakis and aqua-colored Crocs with an anime-made blushing painted on one and lining up a sniper shot on the other. He was late because security was concerned about his MLP chain wallet. Here we see the wild weeaboo released from captivity, searching for a way to survive. A pair of flesh-colored leggings that made her look as if she wasn't wearing pants at all. A sweatshirt that opened in the front, that had been pulled to the side a bit to reveal a lacy camisole top. We work as therapists. No fucking way she got that job. For more info, both her wig and glasses were askew. There was an odor somewhere between human and cat urine. And about halfway through she asked if she could take a break because she left her car running to charge her phone. We work as therapists. Maybe the kerning wasn't clear on your sign. I worked in the US Senate a couple years back. We were interviewing about half a dozen candidates for a pretty junior position. One of the interviewees was wearing a Harvard t-shirt, a Harvard jacket, and Harvard sweatpants. We were astounded.
What are you applying
The
to?
first question my co-worker asked was, "Did you go to Harvard?" The guy did, and he handled the rest of the interview surprisingly well. He didn't get the job, but he did become a running joke in the office for a while. Trying for a set bonus, I guess. My master's student came to defend his thesis barefooted because his slippers got wet. I was the person. This was 20 years ago, and I had just moved to the city. I was 17 and spent 3 weeks working as a hostess at Denny's. A friend asked if I wanted to go rollerblading, so I was strapped into my rollerblades and was wearing athletic wear. She then pulled up to her gym, had me walk in my rollerblades up to the second story where the daycare was, and told me that I was interviewing for the nanny job that she heard was available. I actually got the job because the woman who owned the gym was impressed that I could climb stairs in my rollerblades. Daycare, climbing stairs in rollerblades. There is an analogy there, not entirely out of place. I interviewed a young woman who wore a skirt so short I did actually see her underwear when she sat down. The underwear was pink. I gave her feedback later that she should have worn a suit. This was for a business analyst role. Everyone else was wearing a suit. The underwear was pink. It does sound like you analyzed her business, yo. Saggy pants with whitey tighty underwear. When he bent over to sign in at the desk you could see his whole butt, but not his butthole. I sensed some disappointment in the brackets. PJs. She was pulled out of bed and brought to me and my boss for her interview she didn't know she was having. After 5 minutes we offered her a job and she actually turned out really well. Back when I was an hourly manager at Walmart, guy came in with greasy hair, white t-shirt full of holes, and sweatpants. And to top it all off, he looked like he had a semi. Surprisingly he didn't smell, and the clothes actually looked clean, so that was good. But still, I gave him a hard no. But the overnight assistant gave him the go, because he wasn't going to be on her shift, and she thought it was hilarious. This guy was a freaking nightmare. Wore that same outfit, now never washed, almost daily, smelled like death, and coming. And he was crazy. We were finally able to fire him after he pulled out his pocket knife and cut his co-worker. Thankfully the cut didn't cause any real damage to the kid. But seriously, WTF. Smelled like death, and coming. One of those is oddly specific. Not an employer, but when I applied for my city's M's it was a pretty grueling interview process. Showed up in a nice shirt, dress pants and a tie. guy who was interviewing with me showed up in ripped jeans wearing chains and a white shirt. This was an interview with 3 senior paramedics and the medical director of the city. They told him to leave and come back when he was serious about it. I just interviewed for City EMT about 14 days ago. I wore a piecemeal suit that looked pretty good. The guy after me was wearing cargo shorts, hiking boots, and a plain t-shirt. After I walked out, he looked at me and his face fell. I hope he interviewed well, for his sake. The interview was with 2 paramedic lieutenants. I worked with a guy who applied to the local big city fire department. Apparently all candidates had to submit a passport type photo of themselves, although I failed to see how that's relevant. Diversity quota perhaps? Anyways, this guy was a gym nut and also sent a full head and torso photo of himself, with no shirt on. When I asked him why, he replied, "So they know I'm not a twink." Well, it must have worked, as Twinkie is now a firefighter. That's
Today's
the
gonna be like a
twinkiest thing I
church.
ever heard.
Just gonna
One time I was having dinner in a restaurant and saw a young woman come up to the counter and
Maybe
ask
stream
for
for
a
2
job application. The employees gave her one and she sat down near me to fill it out. This is when I noticed she was wearing a cap with a huge
He said what?
leaf on it. She finished it, returned it to the counter, and asked what the follow-up would be. The employee said, "We'll contact you in a few days for an interview, and when you come back, don't wear that hat. Go spend a day at court. You'll be amazed how many people show up to the judge in their best pot leaf or rebel flag t-shirt." Woo boy, the guy without pants. At my last job, I spent 10 months in 2017 on a research team doing statistical learning research for health informatics. It's a very large healthcare company, and they basically took almost a dozen of their PhD researchers from BI, R&D,
Why the fuck they move like
Market
robots?
temporarily reassigned them to the new Center for Data Excellence.
The mirror be
2
moving
of the
like
PhDs were
water.
director AVP level, so they each got
Especially when
to
you're
bring
just
a
like
team
water.
member with them. My director brought
I
me
did not
for
say
market
that.
dev because my background's in mathematical modeling.
Stop the motherfucking
The
music.
guy didn't have
You.
anyone in his
Is you
department
dumb?
who was free enough to bring along, so they posted the job and started interviewing. I do the pre-interview stuff with one of the junior PhDs, and then the senior team members who come in. Anyway, 4 days into interviewing, we get one dude up on Skype for his interview, and
I prefer the
he's
old
way
mirror
too close
V.
to the screen.
It was more
Like his laptop's up
flamboyant.
on his knees.
This one is
We
like
asked him to move the laptop
watered
back a
down
bit,
straight mirror.
and he gives it up that he can't, because the lower part of his shirt has a huge, fresh coffee stain, and his pants are hanging on the adjacent wall. He'd lost track of time and rushed home, and he'd spilled his coffee in his hurry. We told him, "No problem, we'll find a new time for you. The shirt might be a goner, but be sure to wash the pants in hot water right away." We actually hired that dude, and I think he's still there. Great guy. Honesty is usually the right call. Crap happens to everyone, but how you deal with it is always relevant. I was on the opposite end of this. I was fresh out of school and had been struggling to get an interview anywhere. I finally got a call about an interview at a white-collar firm, and was told to be at the office at 9 AM and to dress casually.
I'm gonna risk
2
it.
days before the interview, I drove out to the office at 5:15 to see how the employees dressed so I could get an idea of the work environment and what to wear. Everyone was wearing dark suits, including the women. I decided to dress business casual, wearing khaki slacks, a light blue button-down shirt, and a brown sport coat. On the morning of the interview, I arrived at 8:45 AM. I had spent several days preparing responses to potential questions I could be asked. I had fresh copies of my resume and a fancy portfolio, and had done everything I could to make a good impression. I even whitened my teeth and got a haircut the day before. I was ready. My interviewer didn't show up until about 10 AM. She walked in and said, "Sorry I'm late. I had some errands to run this morning." I was a little taken aback, especially considering she came in with a big Starbucks cup. I
Yes.
kept my poker face up and pretended like it didn't bother me that she decided to get coffee instead of being on time. Then I noticed she was wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt.
Bitch
She
yourself,
shook
fool.
my hand and
Thank
said,
you.
"I thought I told you to dress casually." The rest of the interview went as about expected. She even told me that my GPA, achievements, and awards in grad school didn't matter. She pretty much just made fun of me the whole time in between stories about her kids. Also, maybe if I would have worn a tank top, gym shorts, and flip-flops things might have gone better. I did not get the job. Now I kind of want to know how much worse she would have been without that coffee. Seriously though, as the recipient of some awful higher ups, sounds like you dodged a bullet. I have one from just last month. This guy was coming in to interview for a financial advisor program. Everyone in our office dresses very professional, and most people I interview are dressed in their best suits. This gentleman came in wearing a stained white dress shirt, with a yellow tinted white undershirt. I forget what kind of pants, but he had a cloth joker belt. Why so serious written all over it with a joker's face in green and black that he didn't loop through the rest of his pants and was swaying around when walking. He also had very long creepy fingernails that were very dirty and he kept rolling and rubbing his fingers together to get the dirt off subconsciously. The icing on the cake was he coughed and snorted something up very loudly, then swallowed it, then loudly commented nice. Somehow this guy aced our assessments and put together a great resume, but was just the exact opposite of professional. We are still not sure if he was trying to frick with us, or was that terribly oblivious. I just assumed he was interviewing for someone else, like Ben Affleck at Good Will Hunting. Fellow I knew was the counselor at the unemployment center. He said he had to explain to one guy he was coaching for job interviews. Don't wear that hat that says beer makes me smart. A Gale hoodie. You're pretty much hired, but there is also a private one-on-one interview that you need to complete. Please follow me. I had a young guy come in one day who I think was clearly trying to not get the job. Like his dad gave him an ultimatum to get a job or get out type of thing and he was just going to interviews to appease him. He had his hair in pigtails high on the sides of his head with wire threaded in them so they'd stick out. Black t-shirt that said frick on it in giant white letters. Plaid schoolgirl style skirt. Rainbow tights. 90s chunky club kid style shoes. At that point you are obligated to give him the job out of raw spite. It wasn't so much of inappropriate clothing. It was more the action of uncrossing her legs very wide while wearing a short skirt. Meanwhile never taking her eyes off mine. Yep, she was an hour nightmare waiting to happen. Ah yes, she was basic instincting you. A tight muscle shirt. It's great that you work out. Big guy, but it's not a gym. Plus he only worked his glamour muscles. He was thick around the middle. Dude, at least give the office a show. I've never had to deal with inappropriate clothing at an interview before, but, and probably worse, I did have to try to explain away to elected officials and citizens at a public consultation meeting why the engineering consultant we contracted out for a portion of developing that town's strategic plan showed up in a fricking Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops. Reason I gave. He wanted to stand out and field as many questions as possible by sticking out like a sore thumb and seeming approachable. Real reason. This was his last gig before retirement, so he had zero fricks, and he had just signed his divorce papers that morning and spent the afternoon drinking at the hotel bar with his lawyer. Unfucking real. Nothing in his contract dictated anything about attire, since 99% of what he was paid to do was going to be done from his winter place in Arizona. Only that he would be expected to show up at any public consultations. You better fricking believe our standard contracts going forward included a clause on it. Frick, he's an engineering consultant. They hit a certain age level of experience and you best believe they can do as they wish. Now how most of them wish is maybe wear jeans a tad more often and work from home one day a week. But boy, there's really nothing you can say to an engineer who has so much experience they can design your facility backwards with their eyes closed. Had a candidate come in for a recruiting role. She was young and beautiful, but she was wearing some of the tightest yoga pants ever. Nothing was left to the imagination. Her top looked great though. Had the same happen. Young, attractive, yoga pants that seemed painted on. College hoodie. 2 of 5 on her interview loop were women. One being a manager. She absolutely aced the interview. Nobody said a fricking thing about the yoga pants. We hired her. A see-through shirt. I could make out the details of her bra. Right after that, a candidate came in with one eye in bright green shadow, liner, and mascara. The other eye was completely free of makeup. Poor attention to detail. That was weird day. I actually got a job by showing up scruffy. At the time I'd been working construction trying to get back into office work. Saw a now hiring side and just wandered in and asked for an application. The person who handed me the application was nice and polite to my face. Then told another coworker that guy has no chance showing up like that. The other coworker was my cousin, who informed the HR manager, who called me to apologize and invited me for an interview. I didn't even know what had transpired until my cousin told me later, but I said oh no worries, I was just passing through and obviously I'll be appropriately dressed if you hire me, haha. Made sure I was properly cleaned up and dressed appropriately for the interview. Got the job and ended up working there for 5 years. Had they not made some stupid remark, I may not have even been considered. I had an interviewee for an entry-level customer service position at a large company. Showed to our interview 15 minutes late in Hello Kitty pajama bottoms, a matching backpack, a bright pink hoodie, and warm and fuzzy slippers. I didn't even bother with the interview as she was late.